All right, here we go, folks. Welcome to Digital Marketing Wednesday with yours truly and my old pal, Coach Ben Mathis. We're here today to talk to you about what we called all things Google for the first section of this. So we're going to nerd out a little bit on pay-per-click and long tail and target and some other fun stuff that you may or may not be aware of. Then we're going to dig into virtual seminars, something that Ben mentioned when we first started this series back in, what was that, Ben? Late March or so we started this?
It seems like a year and a half ago. Yeah, I think it was March.
Yeah, I know. It's like the 47th day of June and the 18th month of COVID and whatever that. So anywho, and then the third part of today's session, we're going to talk about the importance of really nailing virtual listing consults or buyer consults via Zoom or some comparable platform. Super, super important today. So Ben, what's up in Raleigh, and what do we want to share with the people today?
It is hot in Raleigh, hotter than it normally is. And apparently one of my team members says I like to keep my office where she came and said, "Where are you hiding the bodies at? Because that's how cold it is in here." And I said, "You don't understand. I'm naturally hot. I'm talking about my body temperature, guys, not the way I look, although I know what y'all think. It's actually too hot in Raleigh right now. So other than that, everything's good, man. Real estate market's cooking. New stats came out, 1.3 months of inventory in Raleigh right now. That's just nuts. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So listing battle. So the listing part about the consultation piece today and nailing your Zoom listing presentations, it's been a key piece for us. I'm excited to dig into that.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Well, you're talking just briefly about the market and how hot it is there. And we're seeing that in pretty much every market that we coach in right now too, as you well know. And you might have seen this morning, NAR came out with their existing home sales numbers for the month of June, as to be expected, just a huge beat on that. So big numbers coming out. So we're excited for what that's going to continue to mean for the real estate market. For those of you who read some of what I wrote in yesterday's newsletter, the stock market is not the economy. The economy is not the real estate market. The general public likes to assume that those three things always move in tandem, and they don't necessarily move in tandem. And what Ben's describing to you right now is the real estate market, and the things that drive that are different than the things that you're hearing in the news cycle about the economy and the stock market. So we're not here to talk about that today, though. Just file that away or go check out the newsletter if you missed it. So let's dig in on the Google piece, Ben. So why do we want to spend a little time talking about the importance of pay-per-click and long tail and target keywords and stuff like that?
It's a good question. And I was thinking about this earlier today. Why even talk about Google? And then I was like, oh, I don't think people really understand how big Google is, and then also how many tentacles it has in your life that you don't even know about. So I was just looking through some stats as we're getting ready for this today. There's 1.8 billion Gmail users, active Gmail users in the world. Guys, there's like what, 8 billion people in the world. So that's craziness when you think about it. They have a 43% market share. Second place is Yahoo at 18%. That's not even second place. You can take second and third and add it up, and it's still less than Google. And here's the thing with all of that, and this is something I was mentioning to Bill last week, is that it's not just that they're an email provider or a search provider. They're a data company. They're a huge data company. And I think people don't realize they got in trouble for this in 2012, and then 18 and 19, they also had some pushback. They take everything inside of your accounts and they scrape it for information. They use it to build up predictability around buying behaviors. They sell it to advertisers. So they are one of the largest data companies in the world. I mean, if not the largest data company in the world. So when we think about why is it important to pay attention to Google, it's because there's a lot of eyeballs there, but also the tools that they provide to you as a marketer or an advertiser in your business. They're pretty robust. I mean, and they're actually very well laid out for you to use. So it's not super hard to set up a pay-per-click campaign or PPC campaign and create some traction for yourself. The conversion side of things, of course, that's a whole different topic, and we've talked about that a lot. But it's a different side of things. But on the front end, creating all that's pretty easy. I think it's worth paying attention to because it's the biggest company in terms of marketing, as well as that scale that's out there right now. And then the other part of this that I think is really important, and this is the difference that I make between Google and Facebook, is that with Google, people are searching for a solution, right? And it's different than Facebook, where you're interrupting them with a possible solution to a problem that they may or may not know that they currently have, right? So when you have something on Google and somebody clicks on your ad on Google, they are literally out looking for that solution. They are looking for how to buy a home, how to sell a home, homes for sale in a certain area. And we'll talk through all the different dynamics of that. But I think about the intent behind what the person is doing. So Google for me is a little bit farther down that funnel. If we imagine a funnel where Facebook's at the top, so those people are a little bit longer out, and then Google's kind of the next step down, where they're a little bit more solution focused now. So if you can advertise well on Google, the traffic you drive could potentially be shorter time horizons on converting for yourself. So I think Google is an important one that some people pay attention to. Other people kind of lump it into the online lead gen category, and they just kind of shovel it to the side and they don't pay attention to it. And I think that there's opportunity there, not just from SEO, but also from the PPC side as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you make a good point on all of that in that middle of the funnel and what we see. Let's maybe rabbit trail on this for a second too. I know we see a lot of folks, either people that we coach or just out there in general, who have a certain amount of money allocated to PPC, and they're handing it to their website development company, or they're handing it to Boomtown or Commissions Inc. or whoever, just to name a few. And my pros or cons on any of those. They're just sort of handing it off and saying, go spend it. So talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about what role maybe analytics or keywords might play in that, and how you feel about just handing it off versus sort of monitoring it yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. And it goes back to who's your key person you're trying to be in business with, right? So it really depends on, and the easiest distinction to draw in the real estate business is just say luxury market and then everyone else, even though the everyone else category, I believe, is, you can segment that out for days. But just say between those two categories. So those are different target keywords that you would go after for people who are searching for example, luxury properties for sale in Raleigh. That's a different keyword group than homes for sale in Raleigh. So you would differentiate on those two keywords based on who you're trying to be in business with. I'm more of a proponent for you to do it than not do it. So in that regard, I would say handing it off to someone, letting them run it. These companies that do it now, the Boomtowns, the Sierra Interactives, Commissions Inc., all those companies that will manage your PPC for you if you tell them where you want to be at, they're pretty good at it. Boomtown's been doing it the longest, and everybody kind of has come in after them. They're pretty good at, if you tell them the parameters of who you want to be in business with, and really they go geographic. So they say, what location do you want to be in? And they know how to target those keywords pretty well. I'm not against that idea if it gets you started. I personally prefer more control over it, because I do see that if you're trying to get your spend down or your costs down a little bit, you can do it if you pay attention to it and you spend some time on it. You can get that down pretty drastically. We see our PPC leads depending on the keywords, depending on the market. As always, it depends. But we typically see it between $3 and $7 per pay-per-click lead. And that's with some parameters around higher price points that we target with that ad spend. And with most companies, they're going to charge you, you have to have a budget for the ad spend itself, and then they charge you a percentage to manage it. Usually it's 10%. Sometimes I've seen 20%. It varies based on what they're doing, how involved they are with it, how much they're setting up for you, things of that nature. So if you're trying to lower your costs a little bit, I would say handle it yourself. Plus, over time, you'll get good enough at it that you can really dial it in and lower your cost per lead.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know we had kind of come up with 3 bullet points under this, so maybe this is a good launch point for us on this. Talk a little bit about pay-per-click, some of which you've already touched on, and then what the heck does long tail mean and why should we care about that? And then let's get into some of the nuances of targets as well.
Yeah. So pay-per-click, if you hear PPC, that means pay-per-click. It means you're paying per click to your website, right? And typically when people talk Google, they say PPC and SEO. Those are the two acronyms that are thrown around. So PPC is pay-per-click, SEO is search engine optimization. Fancy word for saying that Google likes the stuff that you're putting out. The way I differentiate is organic versus paid. There's pros and cons to each side of that. And when we look at long tail keywords, that will feed into both of those categories, because you can build an SEO platform based on long tail keywords for a hyper local area, as well as use those in your PPC campaigns to help juice the front end of that, because PPC will be quick results. SEO is long-term results. So there's pros and cons to each of them. Really, it's time horizons on what you're trying to get out of it. So PPC is just paid ads at the top of Google. So whenever you've typed a search into a Google, either on the Google search bar or the URL, at the top, you'll see a section that is clearly marked ads, and it'll have top 3 results. And what people know at this point is that we are extraordinarily lazy as human beings. And I was just looking at some of the Google search results, Bill, when I was going through, and there's like 1.7 million results, 1.7 billion sometimes. I'm like, who goes through all these results? Like, why even display that number? And what they found is that typically, I think the number is like over 50% of people don't even scroll past that top of the page, right? That top of the fold is what they call it. So wherever the line break is, either on a mobile device or on your computer, you don't even scroll down to the bottom of the first page, much less scroll to the bottom and then go to page 2, 3, 4, 5. So really, it's pretty much if you aren't on that first page of Google and really at the top of the first page of Google, the likelihood of someone finding you to click on your material, no matter how much they're hunting for that information, pretty slim. So that's why PPC comes in. They put your ads at the top of it. And the way that's set up is it's based on an auction basis so that you can bid on a keyword that you want to target. So if your keyword, for example, is homes for sale in Raleigh, right? That's our keyword we're going to target. Google will say, okay, if you want to be on every single time that this search is done and you want to appear at the very top, it'll be $4.54 per click is what they're estimating it'll cost you to do that. So you would put a budget out for that and say, this is how much I want to spend to get on the front page. And they have a minimum and a maximum budget. And that's pretty much pay-per-click. Again, it's not super extreme. The main things you'd have in place for pay-per-click is figuring out what keyword you're targeting, who are you competing against. So I always like doing a little bit of research on that beforehand. It's kind of looking at who else is out there bidding against keywords against me. And here's the thing, if you're going against a big company, I shy away from those just because I know they're spending way more money than I want to spend. When I say big company, I think of like the Zillows, I think of the, Redfins, I think of the major syndicators or listing aggregators in our markets. They have $1 million budgets where, we're not anywhere in that range right now. So the likelihood of me winning on those or burning through my ad dollars it'll happen a lot faster. So it's more effective for us to figure out the long tail keywords, and that's what we'll talk about in a second. So the big thing is having a keyword picked out, and then on the back side of that, having a landing page for these people to go to. So in Facebook, the difference is in Facebook, when people click on it, you can have them register directly inside of Facebook. They don't ever have to really leave the platform, right? They can hit as a lead ad, put all their information in, they don't go anywhere. Whereas with Google, they have to go somewhere. So you got to have a website set up. You have to have a landing page set up. You have to have something set up, and it needs to be related to what they were looking at. Because one thing Google will measure is the bounce rate on your pages. So say you pay for a Google ad, and then somebody clicks on your thing, they go to your website, and they just click off. They don't sign up. They decide not to do it. Google's going to start noticing that, right? That's the other thing. They're a data aggregator on all of this stuff. So they're tracking everything you're doing. If you have Google Analytics on your site, and if they notice a consistent bounce rate on whatever landing pages you're pushing paid traffic to, they are going to stop sending you or putting you at the top of the results. Because at the end of the day, Google makes its money from people relying on it for bringing them effective searches. So even if you're paying them money and you're not directing the people to a proper place or whatever they're looking for, Google's going to start downgrading you in terms of allowing people to go to that page. And I've heard of them blacklisting pages as well after a while, where they stop allowing you to spend money to send traffic to that page over time based on the results, the bounce rates, the signups, the conversions, all that stuff. Sure. So those are the two sides of the pay-per-click piece that's important to have in place if you're going to go down that route.
Yeah, and maybe this is where you're headed with long tail keywords or key phrases as well, is talk a little bit more for the folks who might just sort of be getting familiar with this. Homes for sale in Raleigh is going to carry a really high sticker price. And so tell us a little bit why on that. And then in the long tail or hyper local or something like that, why that's going to be comparatively less expensive. And then maybe that leads us into the next phase of this.
Right. So you got to think of natural language search. So when people go to search things on Google, they typically don't search the way we as marketers would like them to search. So they'll search in terms of how they would ask a question. Typically, you'll see a lot of how to do something with something in Google search results. And the one thing that these big companies cannot do is they can't target all the keywords in the world because there is not a budget large enough to do that. And there's literally so many variations of keywords that people search for, they couldn't possibly target every single one, especially on a hyper local level. So when you have homes for sale in Raleigh, that's a pretty generic phrase and it's highly searched. So what the bigger companies will do is they'll say that's a highly searched term in that city. They will go to war for that bid because they know that, for example, there may be 100,000 searches on it per month. They know that it's worth their dollars to go after that bigger search category for themselves because they need to feed that into their system. So they need that amount of criteria or data to go back and make it worth their while to spend their money on it. So they'll all compete on that range. And those cost per click, they can be anywhere from $25, $50, $150. You're talking very expensive for Google pay per click. And it just keeps getting driven up the more people get into it. So when we say long tail keyword, we think more hyper local. And this is where you have a really great opportunity. I think a lot of people are missing this right now is because one, advertisers have pulled out of the market. So a lot of small businesses have pulled out of the market for the moment. So a lot of these long tail keywords are available. And the second piece of that is one, like I said, the big companies don't target them. So you have to think in terms of homes for sale in Raleigh. Where else in Raleigh would people be searching for? So I like to think of like school districts, so I'll think of certain subdivisions, I'll think of school districts, I'll think of all those types of things that people can search for potentially to find things that are based off that long tail keyword. So the way it goes in my brain is that there's this big mind map with homes for sale in Raleigh in the middle, and then you kind of draw up all these little corollaries of what else would they be searching for if they're searching for homes for sale in Raleigh. And you probably experienced this when you were searching for something. You'll type something in, didn't find exactly what you were looking for, so then you're going to go back in and say, well, now that I saw all the homes for sale in Raleigh, I really like this home over in this neighborhood off of North Hill. So then you go back and you say, homes for sale in North Hill subdivision off of Northbrook Drive, right? That's a long tail keyword. And if we didn't target that, I bet the searches are like 50 to 100 per month. The beauty of it is it's super specific to that area. So those people are more likely to convert because now they've narrowed their search down from being all over Raleigh with everybody bidding for their attention to now it's your backyard. You can define it by school, geographic location, but really it's just building up that longer tail keyword.
Right. Well, and this is the secret sauce. I mean, you touched on a couple of really important things. To go all the way back to when we started this, we affectionately called it the Double Down series that we began back in the middle of March. And one of the strategies that if you've been around us for any period of time, you've heard us talking about thriving versus surviving. And one of them is doubling down with your ROI and purposeful reinvestment of capital. And we shared with you back then that we believe that we were entering an era where a lot of things were going to go on sale. And that's what Ben's describing right now, just in this little vein of pay-per-click and long tail keywords, is the people who might have been doing something with that, or if you just broad stroke say what's going on with online advertising, you can read this in the macro news, people pulling out of Facebook, even though they have high ROI there, people pulling out of Google, even though there's high ROI there, and that puts those things on sale. So the reason we wanted to talk about this today is because it's another big opportunity, even if you're just scratching the surface on some of this. So here's another kind of play on this. And Ben, I know you guys know this well, is think about other things that people would be searching for right now. Homes with pools are selling at a premium right now. So what if you did, here, just an idea, homes for sale in Raleigh with pools, or homes for sale in North Hills with pools, or whatever it is. It could be golf course homes, or, where I live, beach homes for sale, or homes for sale in Hilton Head within walking distance of the beach, or some iteration of that. So think about how you can play on what's going on in the market and what people are looking for. Homes with home offices, blah, 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 blah. All right. So anyway, I'm back to you because I'm all jacked up. So
no, it's a really good point. I like that because you think of patterns of behavior, right? So then it goes from that demographic search from geographic to demographic to psychographic. So now we start thinking of, why are people buying in this area? Well, for us, for a long time now, it's been this big move to being within walking distance. We're seeing these communities form where people want to be within walking distance to fresh markets, to farmers markets, to entertainment. And once we get past all the COVID stuff, that's going to go back to where people still want to go do that stuff and be in those type of communities. So walking distance to X, Y, or Z, or near golf courses, those type of things that you build into homes for sale. or, homes coming on the market, coming soon homes, people start to pick the lingo up a little bit as well. And the way to go about and research all this, long tail keywords, I like using Google Analytics, their keyword planner. That's the free version that you can get. My other favorite one is called Uber Suggest. So like Uber, the car ride, Suggest. And it was made by a guy named Neil Patel. And it's a super cool tool because it not only gives you the long tail keyword that you're searching for, it gives you all the content ideas on it. It shows you the rankings on how competitive that keyword is, how much it might cost. It gives you other ideas for articles to write, content. So it's a great tool to use if you're trying to figure out, should I go after this word or not? The other thing I'll say on pay-per-click is that, you got to think of it in terms of that funnel. Again, I keep going back to the funnel piece where these people are solution-based right now. They're looking for a solution to their problem. Their problem is they can't find a home, or they're now in the buying phase of finding a home. So what solution can we bring to them? So if they come to that ad and they click on it and they go to your page and they sign up, they're farther down that funnel. These are what I would term, medium warm, lukewarm. Not lukewarm. Lukewarm sounds like they're not that serious. Medium warm, moderately hot leads that come in with a lot of potential on them. So you still need a good conversion process on the back end, but we've seen a lot of success with the pay-per-click. And I think that bleeds into the SEO side, because when you're targeting these long tail keywords, the whole SEO piece of this too, I do think it's a longer play. I am noticing that people are starting to dismiss agent websites. I had a conversation that someone said they just don't think websites are that important anymore. And I'm not saying that it's important as in the gatekeeper of information. I do think that people will search. I imagine that agents think that people search for something, they click on an ad, and then they decide to buy, right? They're going to work with you or not work with you. Those are the 3 steps that they typically take. And if you're anything like me, I'll do a search. I may click on an ad. What I'll do then is I leave the ad, and then I go search your reviews. I check out your credentials in your website, and then I decide to buy with you, or maybe I'll go to your competitor based on what I see. And we're seeing that a lot more, where our website traffic has gone up organically, just because now people are checking out our credentials on both sides of this too. It's not just clients. If you run a team, or you're thinking about doing a team down the road, we've had people come to our websites and stuff and check us out on there, and they'll leave us comments when we're emailing back and forth about our websites, and make some statements that we know they only could have gotten from our websites because we haven't talked yet. So people will go to your website now to check you out. And I think that's where the SEO, or the search engine optimization piece of this is key, because you can build those long tail keywords in and then drive traffic to those keywords, and potentially win some ground on the organic side as well. So not that you're going to rank on the organic side against Google for homes for sale in Raleigh, but if you do like what Bill is saying, walking distance to a golf course, or walking distance to a restaurant, or walking distance to this community, or near these schools, and you build all that content really hyper local style, you can gain traction on a lot of fronts pretty quickly. And that's where you use the pay-per-click to ramp it up on the front end, and then the SEO sticks with it long term. And that's the thing to think about. Pay-per-click is as good as long as you're paying for it. If you ever stop paying for it, it goes away. If you do a good job building the SEO out, it'll stay there forever.
Exactly. So one other interesting thought, and you're pinging on both of these with the SEO and the pay-per-click thing, is building out that content that's sort of that lifestyle content. So things that people might like to do in your area. So let's say, I don't know, maybe you live in the mountains, and people like to kayak on rivers in the mountains. So maybe you write a blog on places to kayak near Asheville. And then there's your blog post. And then within the blog post is for homes near these kayaking areas, click here. So you guys get the idea. You just sort of think through what you would do if you were in the shoes of the buyer, and then just build that content around it. So Ben, how else does this fit into different targeted opportunities, or do you feel like you've covered that the way that you wanted to cover it so far?
Well, you just spurred a really good tactical thought about the article piece when you're writing SEO. So I'll give you guys a tactical way to do this. And this is from one of the people I follow. He calls them skyscraper articles. So what you do is you figure out a long tail keyword you want to target, you Google it, you find something that has traction or ranks on that first page, and maybe hasn't been updated for a couple of years. You take their article and you don't copy it, but you make a better version of it. You add more links in, you add better content in, you update some of the stuff that they may have in there. You find out where they're backlinked to, or who has linked to them. So when you're trying to find out who links to an article, you can just do that search, find a key phrase in the article that's unique to that article that you don't think would show up anywhere else. And then you plug that back into Google. It's going to pull up everywhere it's been reposted at. So then you can send an email to all those people and say, hey, I saw you had this person's article. I rewrote another article based on the same topic. It might be interesting to you. If you'd like to post it on your site, here it is. Check it out. Thanks. You do that to about 100 different sites. When you find a skyscraper article, you can siphon off traffic from skyscraper articles that are based on hyperlocal search or that long tail keyword. So that's a really tactical way to go out and do that. Super smart though, because you can start building that over time. Like say you have like, maybe you live near dog parks and that's your interest. Talk about your interest, build in that keyword search, that long tail keyword, and you can siphon off a good bit of traffic that way. We've seen it work a couple of times just by, I've tested it. Like I said, the school ones worked really well for me. Like that's been an interesting one to see happen. We have a hyperlocal website set up to a specific community that we farm. So all the postcards, all the mail outs that we do, they all drive traffic back to that local hyperlocal website. So a niche website. And then on the other side of that, all the content we write is about that area. So we're trying to find things in that area that will all link back in. So it's all driving it back to the one place, which then links over to our main hub website, which they can sign up on for, house searches, things of that nature. But yeah, it's a good idea to write an article. That just pinged a good thought. I like that a lot. I think it's a slick way to go about and do it. And if you go out and you find somebody who's already done it, it works because Google is ranking it on the first page. So you don't waste your time writing content that nobody's going to read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And this comes up often on coaching calls as well, as people are talking about blog content and what to write. And you and I have discussed this before too. And one of the easiest places to start on this is just imagine that you have an out-of-town buyer who's moving to the area for a job relocation, and they want to know all the different things about the area. They sort of read a little bit about it, and what are all the questions they would have? And you sort of lay those all out on the table, and then you start building content around those because you already know how to answer those questions. You answer them for your out-of-town prospects. So the creative element tends to flow really well from that. So one other thought on this, Ben, I'd like for you to address, and then we'll move into the virtual stuff. On a recent session of this, you and I talked about farming. We talked about traditional farming, and we talked about digital farming. So what role does PPC and SEO play in digital farming, and what dots should the folks connect between those two things?
Great question. So I'm always trying to drive my offline to online, right? So that digital farming piece, trying to drive everything back to that somehow, because one, the automations you can build in so you can consistently follow up people. It's just easier that way. But really, you look at those hyperlocal keywords, right? So when you're target marketing certain areas and you're trying to drill down on what areas have good search traffic, or maybe I'm trying to build a presence in this community, a great way to do it is through PPC, because again, you're going to be hyperlocal. Most of the agents in those areas are not targeting these keywords. And if they are, their budgets that they're spending are not driving the cost up so high that you can't jump in the pool and play with them a little bit. And then when you do that, you have, again, you can make this as complex or as simple as you want. Simple way to do it is just drive them back to a landing page, and then have that landing page set up for everything from your postcard to your mail outs to your phone calls to your text to your drip campaign emails. It's all funneling them back to that one landing page so they sign up there. And then that can kick off the conversion series or emails that you follow up those potential leads with. So I think it's a layer. I keep going back to layering. And I think we mentioned it in that farming episode. You can go as deep in the weeds on this as you want. I'm an end instead of an or person. So I'm always thinking, what's an additional layer that I can hit on? And the other thought process on this is, that blue ocean strategy, right? Where you go outside of where everybody else is at. So if you're targeting hyperlocal keywords in your farming area, now they're seeing you everywhere. They're seeing you on their social media. They're going to see you on their mailboxes when you get a postcard. They're going to get a call from you because everybody on here I know is picking a phone up and prospecting and running really hard at that. And then they're going to see you on the Google search as well. So you literally become just part of their day-to-day, so that when it comes time, it's not a question of who do we call, because you're the one that's forefront of their mind. So I just see it as another way for us to block people into knowing about us in our local communities. The other side of that too is I think you have to go small to go big. I think too many people will try to target an entire city, right? Or say, I'm going to take, and of course, if you're in an area where your city's like, 3,000 people or 2,000 people, that's a different story. But if you're in a bigger area, the best way to go about this is really to go small to go big. find your niche, find your area, get really hyper local on it, become the expert in that area. And then you can run all these sequences, and it's not really that expensive to do this. I mean, you're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to go out and do a pay-per-click campaign with a Facebook ad campaign with a postcard and get some data for some dialers. You can do a lot of damage with that and keep the budget pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and win every single listing appointment you go on in that farm area, because you can show them those things and they think you're a wizard.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, let's change gears because we got about another 20 minutes or so here together. We want to talk about virtual seminars and we want to talk about virtual consults. So where would you like to go next?
Yeah, let's hit the virtual seminars piece. I think it's exciting to talk about. And I think it's a piece that people heard us talk about again back in March. And we were like, yeah, this is an important thing to go do. And I think we would show them one that we did. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. And we're still getting results from a seminar that I did back in March, and it's July. And people are still finding the information. They're still clicking on the content. They're still signing up on our pages. And we're still getting conversions from that. And it's like you look at that. And again, I'm always thinking of how can I get in front of the most people possible at one time. So I'm a big fan of anything I can do digitally, whether it's seminars, whether it's trainings, whatever it may be. But the seminar piece, I really think is a huge component that people are kind of taking their eye off the ball on a little bit right now, because they feel like things are semi getting back to normal, even though everywhere's a little different with what they're doing. But they've kind of gone, okay, I don't need to do that. It was a good idea. I don't need to do that. And I just see it as this really great piece for you that's super leverageable. And that's what I go back to is you can't find a better way. I did that seminar back in March, Bill, and people are still hitting on it now in July. And it took me, 2 hours to put it all together. But here we are 4 or 5 months later, and people are still clicking on it and coming into the funnel to potentially buy or sell a house. So I think about seminars in general right now to think, maybe people need the push of here, why it's a great idea. And then also I think it'd be great to talk about, because I know on Friday we're doing our internal one for our clients. It'd be great for you to kind of talk through a little bit of the setup on that. And I think also the tools that are behind it are super cool. Now that's the other thing I've been excited about to watch is as we've progressed throughout all of this, the tech companies have kind of stepped up and like they've rolled out some cool things to use on this, that you can do a lot of stuff with these virtual breakout rooms, all that kind of stuff. That would be interesting for people to hear. So why don't you talk a little bit about the seminar we have coming up on Friday?
Thank you for that. I'll be real quick about it. This is probably 6 or 8 weeks ago. Debbie and I hosted a virtual mastermind session for all of our clients and their team members, literally just as a collaboration type thing, not unlike you might go to an actual event center pre-COVID and kind of all hang out in the main room and then break out and talk about different topics and share best practices. We had, 50, 60 people on that live and got great feedback from that. So we're running that again this Friday. So those of you who are clients and team members of ours, be sure that you get signed up for that if you haven't already. And what's cool about a lot of this technology these days, and you may or may not know this, is you can all meet in one spot and then break people out into different rooms and small groups and facilitate things. In fact, one of the topics we're going to be talking about on Friday is maintaining team cohesion and team culture in more of a virtual environment. How do you stay connected with people? And so whether you're talking about running your own team or your own brokerage firm, or you're looking at ways to do different types of seminars with people, this platform that we're on right now, and you said a really important word earlier, Ben, that I want to make sure everybody got, is you said, and you were right, most people don't feel like they need to. Now, when we were talking about this in March and early April, it felt like a need because almost everyone was on lockdown. And they were saying, oh my gosh, what happens if this lockdown continues? I'm going to need to figure this out. Otherwise, I'm going to starve. And now that word need went away and we can sort of do things the way that we've done them before, our observation is most people just said, all right, since I don't need to do it anymore, I'm not going to go push myself into that new thing. And we are really, really, really clear on this, is you are leaving money on the table by not stretching yourself into the things that we're talking about right now. So anyway, the seminar is a great opportunity. Ben just told you why. So let's transition, Ben, into virtual listing consults and virtual buyer consults, because I know you guys are doing those. You're nailing them well. And as we were prepping for this, you shared some great info on that.
It's another leverage piece, man. That's what I keep going back to. And I don't want to say it kills me, but it makes me chuckle a little bit when you hear agents talk about how stretched they are on time and everything. And this is one of those pieces that really can save you time. And it's a benefit to the client too. So if you get really good at it, you can record the presentation piece, or you don't have to. But for us, I'll give you an example. We record the presentation piece that goes out pre-consult. So when we actually get on a Zoom call with someone, they've already seen everything we do. They've heard the big pieces of it. We're not spending 20 minutes in kind of like teach mode with them. Now we're in discovery mode with them. And they already know what we can do. So they've balled in. We built some rapport by sending this stuff over. It makes us look super professional. And I was telling Bill, this is almost like speed to lead at this point. How fast can you get there? And I'll give you an example of what happened with us. We had a person come in who wanted to potentially list their house. And they told us they were interviewing other agents. And we said, okay, awesome. We think it's a great idea to talk to other agents. Let me ask you this. Would you prefer to do a virtual or in-person consultation? And they were open to doing a virtual consultation. We said, great. When are you available? I'm available at 12 o'clock. That's my lunch break. Perfect. Boom. We got on at 12 o'clock with them, did the consultation piece. We sent the video, they watched it. And then we went through their parameters, what they're looking for, hit all the high notes with them. By the end of that whole consultation, and this is where you have to learn how to use the controls. Like Bill said, you have to get comfortable with this stuff because we were able to walk them through the documents, have it in their inbox. They signed it while we were on Zoom with them, a listing agreement. And because we did it that quickly, they canceled their other 2 appointments they had that evening. And that was only because we were first and we were able to do it completely over a digital medium for them in a manner that made them feel comfortable. And we looked competent while doing it. So if you master these tools that you have, it will leverage you. And you can also, I mean, at the end of the night, we have a signed listing agreement. My agent didn't have to go to the house, right? So instead of spending an hour driving somewhere or at someone's house that evening, they were home with a signed listing agreement. That's a win for everyone involved. And I think it's becoming more, like I said before, I think this is going to stick. I think this is going to stick. And I think it's going to stick because you look at the virtual side of things. And I know Tony Robbins just did his UPW, Unleash the Power Within seminar, and he did it digitally. And I look at the investment he made into it, and then I looked at how many people showed up to it. Over 22,000 people showed up for 3 straight days to experience that. Now, you can't tell me that this is going to stick. And here's the thing, they're already pre-selling it again digitally for November.
Right.
And they're selling out. So I look at this and I go, this stuff is here to stay. You cannot avoid this stuff. Now, can you get by with not doing it? I think you could. I think you can meander your way through it. However, you're going to get eventually left behind because the more comfortable you are with this technology, like I said in our market at the top of the seminar today or the call today, 1.3 months of inventory. So every listing is now a battle, right? So we have to be there first. You have to be there fast, and you have to look competent while you're doing it. So for us, the other piece that we do to make people comfortable with it is we actually force our agents to do it. Where when you join our team, you have to record your presentation in the first week you're on the team. And we don't expect it to be perfect and rainbows and unicorns and everything shiny and amazing. We do want to see them, one, use the technology at a medium so they're comfortable with it. And then 2, we want to see them actually, practice the presentation online because it's different doing this online than it is in person. And if you're not comfortable with that, you have to practice it to get comfortable with it. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox, Bill, and let you chat a little bit about it. But I'm big on this. I think it's sticking. And I'm seeing so many advantages to it right now. When you're early to adopt it, you can take so much market share really quickly.
Right. Well, you don't have to get off your soapbox. You can stand on it. I'm going to hop up there next to you and stand next to you. So here's a couple of different ways to look at it. I think the reason, and this is true for all of us, myself included, sometimes the reason we don't dig into something new is because our hand hasn't been forced enough. And so one of the tactics I like to use is what's the cost? What am I missing on? So let me give you an example that came up this week with permission to share. Someone I was speaking with said, this is a listing agent, had an opportunity to take a listing, $300,000 listing. Seller wanted a virtual listing consult because the seller was out of town and head-to-head competition situation. And this particular listing agent was not familiar with this, although had used Zoom before, had not practiced doing a listing consult. And this is a high-powered agent, does a lot of business, a lot of experience, great agent, and lost in the listing competition because she had not practiced what we're talking about right now. So here's the way we discuss that. That's a $10,000 mistake. 300 something thousand at 3% for discussion purposes, a $10,000 mistake. So now we look at that and we say, how many hours would I need to practice what Ben and I are discussing right now in order to feel like I was really good, really solid, really fluid? I don't know. You may have a different answer than I would on that. Let's just call it 10 hours for discussion purposes and to keep the math easy. So in this one example, $10,000 mistake, let's call it opportunity now because that's past. 10 hours, $1,000 an hour. If I showed up at your office today or your home today with my checkbook and I said to you, I'm going to pay you $1,000 an hour to practice Zoom today. You practice it 5 hours today, I'll write you a check for $5,000. You practice it 5 hours tomorrow, I'll write you a check for $5,000. 2 days from now, I'll leave your house and you'll have $10,000 in your pocket for practicing this. Would you do it? And of course, the answer to that is yes. So if you'll bring that mentality to yourselves, you bring that mentality to your team members, you're not missing out on that cost, because when that seller says, like in Ben's example, they were prepared for it. The seller said, yeah, my lunch break's at noon. Okay, great. Flip the switch. Let's go. It's not, oh crap, what do I do now? Because you guys were prepared for that. So now that we're both firmly on the soapbox, I hope that all of you take this as encouragement. To Ben's point, it's not going away. Can you get by without it? Yeah, probably. I don't know how long. However, you're going to get beat by other people who are out there practicing it. So we're here to encourage you to continue practicing it. So Ben, what would you leave them with for homework or additional thoughts or research before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's all this stuff going digital, guys. I know you look back at when we started this in March. I think about how, when we started, we didn't know what we were doing. We just jumped on here. Like I remember when I first did the seminar we were referencing earlier for home buyers, I was just like, I'm just going to go do it. And we went and did it. And was it pretty? No, it was not pretty. Was it effective? It's still working. So I'm going to say it was effective. Thank you very much. And we had a bunch of people sign up for it and it still worked. And now we've refined and gotten better. And I know just talking for me and Bill here, us getting on these has gotten better. We've become more fluid with how we're doing it. I know going forward in the coaching company, we're looking at doing additional things, group coaching online, things like that, this is just going to continue to grow down the road. And I look at that, and that's because we took a step to go do it. Right. And I think that's the key piece here is all this stuff. Everybody looks at it and goes, oh, I can't do that. It's like, well, go take an action step and go do it. Go record yourself. I promise you, go set up a Zoom account, record yourself on Zoom. You're going to be like, oh, I can't stand how I sound. I don't like how I look. Great. Take notes on it. That's what you go fix. That's what you go work on. But if you don't ever go do it, there will be a day when you go up against a listing and they're going to say, I don't want all these agents in my home. I want a digital listing presentation. You're going to say yes. You're going to say, yes, I'm going to go do that listing presentation. You're going to fumble through Zoom like Bill was describing. You're going to lose, and it's going to suck. It's going to suck when it happens. That's all I know. And Bill and I always say we understand failing and learn, and we get beat at least once. But then we go out and say, I'm never getting beat on that again. So if that's what it takes, go out and do it, get beat on it. So then you'll show back up and say, I have to go learn this, if for nothing else, so I don't ever get beat on it again. So I look at that and I just look at the iteration down the road. And I think with this type of stuff, I don't think it's going away. It's just going to keep growing. So like Bill said, could you get by with it? Probably. Yeah. I'm hesitant on that at this point. Like I said before, I just think like you hear Zoom is such a used word amongst demographics that never used it before. I just don't think it's going away. And I think it's going to become, when people see how convenient it is, and that's the thing you keep an eye on, is whenever something becomes convenient, that's when mass adoption really starts to happen of it. Sure. And now it was forced down everyone's throats in March, April, and May. Now they're starting to see the convenient side part of it, where they're like, oh, I don't have to go have someone come sit in my home. I can do a Zoom call with them, walk them through my home, and this person sent me this professional video beforehand or a video of them talking through their processes. So now we just talk about me the whole time, which everybody loves. By the end of that, you're out the door. They don't have to waste any of their evenings with a stranger in their home or you sitting there, telling stuff about their. I'm just saying it's going to be a great leverage piece. I don't think it's going to get minimized or go away. And if you're planning to be here 5 years from now, I would say go out and learn this now because it's going to be here in 5 years.
Right. Yeah, and you can look at the data on that, and the data are really clear. Just go do a quick Google search, if you will, on how many new Zoom accounts have been created since this whole thing started. And I'm not saying Zoom's the end all be all. I mean, you could look at all the other platforms. However, this has been the one that's most mass adopted over the past, 5 months or so. So that's your indicator. And to Ben's point, you're removing the friction that's there. So anywho, all right, Ben, great job as always, buddy. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll see you 2 weeks from today for Digital Marketing Wednesday. No Thought Leader Friday this week, as we're doing our virtual mastermind for our clients and team members. And if you're not currently a client or a team member and you want to get in on that, then let us know. We can hook you up with that too. Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Bye, guys.